Happy New Year. Really excited to see you all. I'm feeling pretty hopeful generally about 2022. And today we're going to dive in on crypto donations, which is an area of incredible promise, but also I think a bunch of nonprofits are already doing some things pretty seriously wrong in this department. And so hopefully we can turn some of that around and paint a little bit of what the path forward might be. So delighted to be here. Couple of quick notes. Keeping it simple before we get started. This event is approved for 1.0 CFRE credits. There is a survey at the end of this session that you need to fill out so that we can keep a record of it. So if you don't know what CFRE is, it's a professional certification. Many of you are on your way, or many of you need to reach enough credits here. And so we once in a while get notifications someone's being audited for this. So just make sure that we get a record. At the end of this, we will post a quick survey in the chat, and that will help. Okay, so agenda for today, super straightforward. We're going to understand crypto giving. We're going to talk about some of the major trends. We're going to talk about some of the keys to success for you and your organization. So some of this can feel a little bit mystical. Hopefully it will feel really simple. And by the end of this, you'll feel a lot more comfortable and confident around crypto giving and what you might want to do next. So quick introductions. I've met a lot of you. Some of you know me. Some of you, this will be the first time. My name is Patrick. I'm really delighted to be the co-founder and co-CEO alongside my wonderful co-founder, Jenny, of an organization called FreeWill. FreeWill is inching up on 150 people and $5 billion raised for charity. So we're super excited about both of those. We have just a wonderful team. We used to be all centered in New York. Now we're sort of scattered to the winds since May 2020. And what we really focus on is helping nonprofits unlock transformational gifts, right? And with a real focus on gifts that are not cash, which tend to be a lot smaller than some of the stocks or IRA gifts or crypto or planned giving. So more on that at some point, but just to give you a little bit of context of where we come from on this. The other thing I'll note is that a lot of the work that and the research that we'll show you happened from a lot of different folks and not just me. So I wanted to make sure credit is given where credit is due. Okay, and one other thing before we get started, we really are just so grateful for your time here. We like to give away books. Generally love reading over here. We're going to send a copy of The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin to 20 people as a gift. This is just a delightful book. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller. Probably read it once every 3 or 4 years. I don't know what year it came out, probably like 2011, 2010. And it's a New York Times writer who really studied happiness for a year and put some stuff into practice. But it's sort of a fun, easygoing read. It's not overly preachy. And so she spends a week on stoicism and tries to figure out what that looks like and a bunch of other things. So really fun read. And as we go into 2022, we thought this might be nice for some folks. So just make a note in the survey as well. If you'd like a copy, just tell us where to send it. Sometimes people say, yes, I want a copy, but don't give an address. Not useful. So make sure you put an address in there as well. All right. How's your week going? Lots of stuff in the news. When we track this from the very beginning of the pandemic all the way through January 11th, you can see that happiness is a bit higher than it was the end of last year, but also so is anxiety. Obviously, Omicron is shifting. Minutes ago, I read a headline in the New York Times that said that the World Health Organization expects half of Europe to have Omicron within 2 months, which is sort of wild. So there's a lot happening in the world, and I'm sure there's a lot happening in your personal lives as well. I got a couple of notes from folks earlier that said, "Hey, I'm really excited about this, but I'm going to watch the recording because suddenly school was canceled, so I'm chasing a 9-year-old around the house right now." So if this is you, hope you're having a good day, and hopefully it's a little bit quieter as you're watching the recording. Other really good news is we ask people on a regular basis how confident you are about hitting your goals this year. And this week was the highest we've ever seen. So I think people are feeling really good about how 2021 ended up and how we're moving into 2022 as well. Great. So when we think about understanding cryptocurrencies, aka crypto, we're gonna talk a bit about this. We could spend 3 hours talking about how these actually function. We're going to spend about 60 seconds on it because it's really important to understand the implications more than all of the math behind it. So we ask you what's most exciting about crypto, and this is a sort of word cloud of all of the responses that you all gave, thinking about the future, make it easy, thinking about how to streamline it, and particularly things like new potential donors, new reach, different sources of funding, different people who might be giving. So there's a lot of excitement here because it really isn't just another way for the people who are already giving to give. It opens up some new donors, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Okay, so what is cryptocurrency? Well, cryptocurrencies are digital or virtual forms of money. Like money, you can use them to buy goods and services, but also like stock or other things, you can invest them for shorter long-term gains, right? So it's just another way to think about something that holds value. How does it work? Don't stress if this doesn't make sense to you. Cryptocurrencies don't rely on banks and middlemen because they're what are called decentralized. This means no single entity is in charge of the money. Instead, they use a software-based ledger of transactions. You'll hear the word blockchain a lot to record and confirm transactions. Most cryptocurrencies make transactions public, although when we say that, it means the different accounts or different wallets will transfer. Doesn't mean everyone knows exactly the person behind it. Right? So you can think of this as a sort of deep series of algorithms that are publicly noted. Another way to think about this is thinking about it like gold. So gold is not intrinsically valuable, right? In the same way that seashells, which were once used as currency, not necessarily intrinsically valuable. Baseball cards don't have any real value, but we collectively assign value to them, and so now we can trade and assign a price to them. So with gold, sort of like gold, people can mine it. Sometimes people get confused by the word mining. Doesn't mean digging crypto out of the ground. It means basically using a ton of computer processing power to uncover new algorithms that will count as crypto. So brief video frozen, but we'll keep going. You can then trade it as an asset or a form of currency. And it has value, as I mentioned, because people place value on it, right? Which is true of not just baseball cards and seashells, but even dollar bills, right? It's a piece of paper, it's not worth $1, but we all agree that it's worth $1. And like gold, there's a limited number of coins, so the value fluctuates with supply and demand. Okay, so let's talk about the history of cryptocurrency quickly, and then we'll get really deep into the philanthropic components of this. So in 2008, the domain bitcoin.org is registered. There is a creator of Bitcoin named Satoshi Nakamoto, but this is not necessarily a real person, right? Or that's not their name. Publishes a white paper. The identity of that person is still unknown. First Bitcoin transfer happens in 2009. The first Bitcoin transaction happens in 2010. In 2011, other coins, so when we talk about cryptocurrency, they're a family of things, and Bitcoin is just one of them. Namecoin, Swiftcoin, and Litecoin, which are 3 others to view. In 2012, the crypto exchange Coinbase is founded. Coinbase is now a public company. 2013, a meme coin, which is sort of a joke or other things, is called Dogecoin, is launched. In 2014, Microsoft allows people to use Bitcoin to buy games for the first time. 2015, new cryptocurrencies, most particularly Ethereum, which is now the #2 cryptocurrency in the world, emerges. 2016, we start to see some more mainstreaming. More companies, including Uber, begin to accept Bitcoin. In 2017, Japan accepts Bitcoin as legal payment. And by 2017, the end of it, the total crypto market is worth $500 billion. In 2018, the total crypto market hits $824 billion and then crashes to $186 billion. In 2020, Bitcoin trades in the 20,000s, for the first time ever. And then in 2021, it hits an all-time high of 70,000. AT&T, Burger King, Shopify, and more accept Bitcoin. But then Tesla halts, who previously said, yeah, you can buy coins in Bitcoin, halts purchases in Bitcoin due to the impact on climate change from the mining. Now, very quick note on climate change. There is some controversy around Bitcoin in particular, but also some other cryptocurrencies. Why is that? Well, if you can imagine, you probably saw images of computers in the 60s that NASA would have, where they have this huge room, and you think, wow, those computers must take a ton of energy. That's a way to think about the amount of computational energy that that running a lot of these processes and running these algorithms take, right? So when people talk about the impact, the environmental impact of cryptocurrencies, what they really mean is it takes a ton of electricity to process some of these computer algorithms and such, right, on the blockchain. Now, the other thing to know is that not all cryptocurrencies have the same level of complexity or have the same level of energy needs. And so there are actually a bunch of more environmentally friendly coins as well. So just to note there, the other thing to note is that the mining is the thing that's most intensive. And once it exists, it's a little bit less energy intensive. So there's some complications there. We can talk a bit about it later, but I just wanted to note that because it's an important consideration when we talk about cryptocurrency. Okay, moving on. This is what the price of Bitcoin, which is, again, the most well-known cryptocurrency, looks like over time. You see rises and falls. Another way to think about this is by far the most volatile asset you will ever accept, right? It is so much more volatile than stocks or anything else. A couple other notes. By 2021, the number of cryptocurrencies doubled from around 8,000 at the start of the year to more than 16,000 now. Some of these are totally worthless, but it is a very appealing thing to be the founder of a cryptocurrency because you own a bunch in case it increases value. The value of Bitcoin this morning was about $42,000. Bitcoin accounts for about half of value of all cryptocurrency, right? So people often use them interchangeably, and you can see why, right? Half of all crypto is Bitcoin. If, this is an interesting fact, if Bitcoin reaches $200,000 per coin, which would be a significant growth of what it is right now, half of the world's billionaires would be crypto billionaires, right? So you can, now we're getting a sense of the just incredible wealth here in crypto, which is why it's really important that we figure out how do we actually accept these donations. The total value in November of all cryptocurrencies was more than $3 trillion, only 13 years after Bitcoin was launched. To give you a sense, the US stock market is roughly $40 trillion, depending on the day. So the fact that this is, what, 7.5% of the whole US stock market is pretty considerable, given that it was only invented 13 years ago and only mainstream in the last 5 years. A new study shows that 16% of US adults have invested, traded, or used crypto. It's about 41 million people. And a lot more are thinking about buying it this year. So why is it getting so popular? Well, the innovation and the volatility ends up being exciting to crypto owners who are mainly millennial, younger Gen X, older Gen Z. It tends to be low fees. Now, why is this important? Because folks that are using Venmo and things, it doesn't matter. Well, particularly for international transactions. So if you're a country like the Philippines, about 20% of the GDP of the Philippines is what are called remittances, meaning money sent from overseas, usually from relatives working. And so Western Union has made a ton of money, taking a pretty significant chunk of that. And crypto is a lot easier in terms to transfer and a lot cheaper. So some interesting stuff there. Also, there's just no government control, right? The decentralization makes people feel like, oh, this is a little bit more utopian. It feels a little bit subversive, and it might be safer in some countries as well. And then obviously profit, right? So investors, you hear stories of people who bought Bitcoin at $1 and now it's worth 20,000, and that's just an incredible gain. So it's a really exciting thing generally. Okay, we asked you all, do you personally own crypto? And about 18% said yes. So this roughly mirrors the US population. 81 said no. A couple big trends impacting crypto this year. The first is the number of crypto owners are soaring. So many people called 2021 a breakthrough year for crypto. Coin values hit all-time highs. It is a massive topic in the media. More than half of Americans who own crypto bought it for the first time in the last 2 years. And another 22% say they're likely to buy it next year. So you can see how quickly this is becoming mainstream. Coinbase, which is, again, the popular crypto exchange, IPO'd this year, I believe, saw an 84% increase in users in 2021. What else is happening? Because crypto is growing so quickly, now crypto donations are following quickly behind. Crypto donations going into Fidelity Charitable doubled in 2020 to 28 million. That's a lot of money. By November 2021, they increased more than 460% to 158 million. And this was before December giving season, right? So you can look at this massive increase. Maybe it's a 15 times increase year over year, right? So those of you that are thinking, should I start taking crypto donations? Should I not? This should be pretty compelling that donors are trying to give crypto away in a pretty exciting way, and you want to be someone that can welcome that. Overall, crypto owners tend to be more generous. So Fidelity found that 45% of crypto investors gave more than $1,000 to charity versus only a third of all investors. Why is that? Well, partly millennials and Gen Z and younger Gen X actually tend to be more philanthropic, at least at a per capita basis, not necessarily in terms of all the wealth they have, compared to boomers and silent generation. What else is happening? Well, 21% of you guys, right, folks that we surveyed, already accept crypto donations. 20% of you donors ask you about crypto. 9% have already received gifts, which means a lot of folks are having to refuse gifts, which is a real problem. And the total value of these gifts is pretty big. So when we asked you how much is total giving worth, 8% of folks who responded get more than $1 million a year in crypto gifts, right? Another, let's call it 7-8%, get between 100,000 and $1 million. So this is growing really, really quickly. If we had asked you this in 2018, it would have been much, much smaller. And so when we can extrapolate that this is continuing to grow, and you'll see an even bigger surge in 2022. Why donations soared? Well, obviously more people have crypto to give. It's almost as mainstream as the stock market. There are huge increases in the value of wealth that are leading to more wealth. But all this value creation means a lot more paid in taxes. So we've talked a lot about capital gains and how important it is to understand capital gains taxes when we think about stock giving, et cetera. That is extra important in crypto giving, right? You all know this, so some of you are going to be masters here already. Some of you, this will be new, so we'll go through it pretty quickly. Capital gains, right? When we think about capital gains, there's a difference between what you paid for in an asset and what you sold it for, right? So if I buy a piece of art at $1 million and sell it for $3 million, I have a capital gain of $2 million. These gains are taxed when I sell the asset. It's called a capital gains tax, right? Pretty straightforward. And when donors give crypto, instead of cash, they don't have to pay that capital gains tax. And they receive a federal income tax deduction at the same time. So this is really, really important. We're not going to walk through all the math that we've done sometimes previously, but to give you an idea, if I live in California and I'm a wealthy person, and we know that a lot of wealthy people in California own crypto, I am going to pay about 23% capital gains taxes. I'm also going to pay about 13% state income tax on that. All of that would be avoided if I gave it away. At the same time, I'm going to get a federal income tax deduction, let's call it 37-ish% for the gift, which means all in all, I might be saving 60-70% of my gift in taxes. So this is a really exciting thing. And for a lot of millennials, this is the first time they're paying capital gains taxes, so they're getting their heads around it really quickly. Why does this matter for you? When folks are avoiding these, they often transfer the savings onto the nonprofit, meaning bigger gifts from the same folks. So for a lot of people, for you all, this is going to feel a little bit like stock giving, right? Stock giving ends up bigger gifts from the same people because they're saving all these taxes at the same time. The difference, though, is that the people who own crypto are a little different than stock donors. And providing this giving option can also open up a new donor pool. So this is really, really exciting. So who owns crypto? Actually, one quick note before we get there. A really important thing happened. In November, the bipartisan infrastructure bill created some new regulation. So crypto and NFTs were already treated like property or stock, so capital gains, et cetera. But what happened is it increased the reporting requirements on some of the key exchanges. So now Coinbase has to report who bought and who sold what, so the IRS can enforce it. What it means is that we're going to see a lot more scrutiny on taxes around crypto. And it means, even though these don't go to 2024, what we'll see is more people thinking about crypto and taxes, more people thinking about ways to give to avoid these taxes. So this is going to be a really exciting time for crypto philanthropy. And we should see a lot of big gifts coming, hopefully to a lot of your organizations. Okay, so who actually owns crypto? We said they're a little bit different than stock donors. And it's really exciting because a lot of you have been thinking, oh my gosh, how do I access millennial major donors? How do I actually diversify my donor base? And crypto tends to be one of the paths, right? So overall, crypto owners are more likely to be young, they're wealthy and male. 43% of men between 18 and 29 have bought or used crypto, compared to 19% of women that age. But I'll just note this, a strong percentage of women say they're interested in buying it this coming year or in the future, right? So the gender imbalance in crypto ownership is actually starting to shift. And hopefully over the next 2 years, you'll see a lot more of that. Crypto owners are also very diverse, with young Asian, Black, and Hispanic adults more likely than white adults to say they've used or invested in crypto. And a lot of you are thinking about how do we diversify our donor base. This is another possible avenue here. Here's a little bit more of the stats, and you can see it in terms of US adults, folks who are 18 to 29, et cetera, by age. So 18 to 29, really heavy investment, right? 31% of folks 18 to 29 have some use of crypto, 21% of folks 30 to 49, and then it drops off precipitously, right? So 3% of 65 plus, 8% of 50 to 64. So this is some really interesting stuff. The other thing is, look at that bottom right graph. I'm not sure if I'm pointing in the right direction. Bottom right, upper income 17%, middle income 17%, lower income. So actually, it's really quite spread out across income levels, which is a little bit surprising. So this is a new potential wealth of investors, right? New potential area of folks that can be giving. So we talked about average age is 38. A lot of folks are under 45. And we just mentioned this. So mostly male, shifting towards female. More than half live in urban or suburban areas. And the average income is $111,000. 70% are investors. They also tend to live in major cities. So this is what we call crypto concentration index, meaning San Francisco is the top. If you are a San Francisco organization, you absolutely have to be taking crypto because there's so much crypto wealth there. The same, by the way, is true of New York, LA, Chicago, Brooklyn, Seattle, San Jose, Houston, Austin, Atlanta. And you can actually look to see, are there areas on this list of the top 20 where you have a lot of donors? If so, we should start thinking about how do we reach out to those donors about some of this. I'll leave this up for just one moment so you can take a look at it before we go. All right. So for many folks, this is a new source of wealth, and many of these people are actually not able to give a lot of cash, but they can give a lot in crypto, which is really, really exciting. So providing crypto donations as an option can help you secure more gifts from this growing segment. And we're really 10 years away from millennials really dominating giving, but it's going to be happening at some point. Another way is that having multiple giving vehicles strengthens your fundraising programs. It's not in the notes here, but one other note here is that even taking crypto signals to these folks that, oh, this is a place where millennials can give, right? As opposed to, we're only really looking for donations from folks who are 70 over. Because crypto is so new to you, it's so new to so many people. We just said, the percentage of folks who bought it in the last 2 years, they actually don't always know that these digital assets can be donated. So it's really important, right? 46% of those who did give crypto said, boy, it was difficult to find charities that accepted it. Some of you who got crypto got it because people tried to give to their Plan A nonprofit, couldn't figure out how to do it, and then came to you. And so it's a really interesting dynamic here. So nonprofits have a huge opportunity here to educate new donors, make it really easy for folks to give. So we'll talk about how to do that in a second, but this is pretty exciting. All right, so we ran an experiment towards the end of giving season, and we created, we meaning the Free Will team, who worked super hard. My colleagues Lakshmi and Marcin put a ton of effort in here, and we built a site called Crypto for Charity. And what we did was we said, okay, great, we're gonna make it really easy to give to more than 55,000 nonprofits, almost like an instantaneous DAF. We partnered with a different nonprofit who would liquidate all of it, send tax receipts, and just send money on. And so this was really, really fun and exciting. And we said, okay, what are we going to learn here? Because we're so curious about this space, and we're all really learning together quite quickly. as I mentioned, this is what we did. The average donation was $2,400, right? Keeping in mind, these are mostly millennial Gen Z folks. So suddenly your average cash donation is $98. It's even lower from this generation. And suddenly these gifts are almost $2,500. The largest donation we saw was $110,000. If anything, this average donation is actually higher than what we were reporting because a bunch of people gave some very small stuff to test it out. So $110,000 from millennial donors. There was a very wide range of causes. Originally we thought, oh, maybe it's going to be these sort of tech-forward nonprofits, or maybe something like Charity Water Only, who's got this really cool hit brand of millennials. Churches, museums, K through 12 education, colleges, animal shelters, sort of across the board. What we're seeing is that crypto is mainstream enough that most charities might be receiving some of these gifts. And so this is a really, really interesting dynamic that we didn't expect, right? All of you who have more than, say, 1,000 donors have a bunch of folks who could be giving crypto, right? If 20-ish% of the US population owns it, some of those folks are on your list. Some of those folks sit in the pews. Some of them went to your college. Some of them go to your museum, et cetera. One example was a significant gift to a major environmental org. And one of the things you can do on the site is you can put a little note in it. Here's what the note said: from a 17-year-old worrying about my future and the future of kids after me. So 17-year-olds aren't making $500 gifts usually, but this just goes to show how expanded the donor pool is, because this individual obviously had bought a little bit, it grew a lot, and suddenly now they're $500 isn't quite a major donor, but this is a 17-year-old. I mean, this is pretty remarkable across the board. So pretty exciting stuff, and we're really looking forward to seeing what happens in 2022. How should you think about crypto donations in 2022? There are 5 keys to success with crypto, and they're all super important. 1, make sure you can accept crypto. We'll talk about what that looks like in a second. 2, have it on your website as an option. 3, sell it immediately. We'll talk about why this is so important. 4, you really want to train gift officers and your marketing team to make sure we're getting this right. And then 5, make sure to follow appropriate tax laws. Many of the nonprofits currently taking crypto are not doing it, and that's a huge problem. There are a couple of really obvious ways, traps, and some super clear ways around them, but you have to know what they are. So first thing, make sure to do it. 21% of you say, yes, we accept crypto. 34% say no, not planning to this year. But 32% say no, but it's a priority for 2022. So, specifically for that 30% and that 21% is already taking it, this is really, really, really important. The folks in the 34%, if you said, no, I'm not planning to this year, we would just say, think about reconsidering it, because the setup can be relatively easy, and you don't want to be turning away gifts that could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So number 1, don't turn away crypto gifts. Crypto giving doesn't need to be a massive effort or cost. It will be a relatively small percentage of overall giving in 2022, right? So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Pretend this is going to be 30% of all nonprofit gifts next year. Not going to happen. But you really want to be ready when donors come to you, because some of these gifts are going to be really, really big. And some folks are hunting for places to give. And if they don't give crypto to you, it's not like they're magically going to send a check for the same amount, right? That sometimes that crypto is just going to go to a different nonprofit. We don't really want that. You want to be ready for some really large gifts, right? We've seen gifts of 100K. There was a gift famously of $1 billion to an Indian nonprofit. This wealth is sudden, it's concentrated. You don't want to miss out on the gift because you just don't have anything in place. You can set up your own wallet. It does require a bunch of work and a bunch of what we call KYC stuff, where you're going to have to get the driver's license, social security number of your officers of the nonprofit. The other thing you can do is you can outsource this to experts and do it relatively quickly. There are some easy and cost-efficient ways to do it. We'll talk more about this in a moment. Second thing is make sure you get donations on your website. So if you already accept crypto or you plan to, make sure it's an easy way to give on your website. You want to include it on your donate page in particular, your ways to give page, et cetera, PS and fundraising emails. This is really, really important, right? The 36-year-old who's going to give you crypto is not going to call you on the phone. They might not even email you about how to make a gift. They are probably going to be on their own phone or on a computer on your website, if it's not obvious, they're going to go to another nonprofit where it will be more obvious. So you are not going to get any crypto gifts from direct mail. You are not going to get them through phone solicitations. People are going to be coming to your website, or you're going to be emailing people, letting them know you can do this, and that's how they're going to find it. So this is really, really important. We strongly recommend to link to it on your donate page. This ways to give page, which often includes vehicles or stock giving or other things like that. Not all donors are going to, especially young donors, are going to know to look there, especially if you have the giant donate now red button in the corner. So really, really important. If you use your own payment processor, which we don't always recommend, you want to include a form to capture information and make sure to provide a reason why. Many crypto owners like the anonymity of cryptocurrencies, but when you provide a clear reason, you can help lower anonymity rates. Even when the reasons are fake, studies show that any specific reason can really move the needle here. So here's some sample language you might want to add to a website. Thank you for your crypto donation to the Land Trust. Please use the form to make your gift. Your name and address are optional, but it helps us tremendously understand who you are. We'll never share or trade information, right? So things like that. Here's an example of a great org called OSearch. You can see in this bottom corner on their giving page that you can click make a gift, and it will help. It will sort of guide you through making a crypto donation. We work with an organization called Austin Pets Alive, and this is what it looks like on their website, right? So we've set it up so that they can easily take 35 coins, capture name and information, super clear, links back to the website. This was something that we were able to get them set up within a day, and now they're super excited to be able to take crypto donations. So this is a really exciting thing. Third point, make sure you sell immediately. So crypto, as we mentioned, is by far the most volatile asset you will receive. Most nonprofits prefer to immediately sell crypto instead of cash. This is by far the least risky way to handle donations. It prevents significant discrepancies between the amount donated and the amount actually received, right? The last thing you want to do is take a donation that's going to fund a wing in the hospital, and then days later it barely pays for a couple snacks, right? So remember, this is hyper volatile compared to other assets. Selling immediately is super useful, right? Bitcoin has frequently had drops of more than 15% in a day. As a comparison, more than 15% drops has happened once in the last 115 years of the US stock market, right? So probably happened a couple times this year. Think about it as being 100 times more volatile than stocks. Coins besides Bitcoin and Ethereum, we often talk about Bitcoin and the rise and falls, can be even more volatile and lose 70% of their wealth in a day, or gain 50%, or gain 500% a day, right? So this is super, super volatile, and really important to, when we work with partners, we help set it up to sell immediately. You want to have a plan to auto liquidate into US dollars, or because some of you are calling in from Canada or Australia or South Africa, make sure it can liquidate to your currency. Number 4, if you don't feel confident about crypto, your team and your board likely won't feel confident either. But to fundraise successfully, gift officers need at least a basic understanding here. So feel free to share this webinar. We're also going to send out a follow-up guide to really help get people smart about what language to use, what language not to use, et cetera. And as crypto goes mainstream, this is a really important shift from previous years. We now need to be able to think holistically and talk to donors about different things at the same time. So it's not enough to have one person who knows about crypto on your team. You want to make sure you can talk about giving stocks or giving crypto or giving cash in the same conversation. On the marketing side, the marketing team should be able to message about crypto to the right donors without confusing others. So thinking about, okay, we're going to message in this geographic area, but not everywhere. Or we're going to think we're only going to talk to our class of 2000 and after about crypto, right? These are some of the strategies that we're going to need. Or you're looking at donors in tech professions or young professionals. These are much more likely to have crypto or at least not be scared off by it, right? So this is how we're going to start thinking about effective marketing. Last thing, this is super, super, super important. So if you haven't listened to anything, please pay attention for the next 2 minutes. Many nonprofits are currently not complying with IRS regulations around taking crypto gifts. I'm going to say that again. There are a large number of nonprofits in non-compliance right now. The reason is crypto feels like stocks. We know exactly what the price is at a given moment, but the IRS treats crypto gifts like property with a different set of rules. Okay, this is really important. So what it means is that when you sell donated property, or if you sell donated crypto, which again, you should be selling donated crypto, within 3 years, you should definitely be selling it within 3 years, you must file Form 8282 with the IRS within 125 days of sale. This thing must be signed by an officer of your organization. So for some of you, you might be the ED, no problem. If you work at a giant college, you've got to go track down the officers and have them sign it for each individual donation over $500. Okay, so this is, some of you are donated cars, you take houses, all this stuff happens. But crypto, these $500,000 donations are going to happen with some frequency, and so it's a really important thing to do. We have a question to go back to one slide. Super, super important. But we'll go here. The penalty for non-filing is only $50 per form, but you really don't want to be the organization that's being fined by the IRS, right? For intentional non-compliance, it's $10,000, but that's not going to be you. It's more like $50 per, but you really just don't want to be in this place where you're being repeatedly fined by the IRS. It is a really bad look for your donors and for your boss and everybody else. So this is generally true of all donations over 500. If a gift is over $5,000, the nonprofit also has to sign Form 8283 for the donor. You don't need to attest to the value, you just need to acknowledge receipt of the property. This is also true, by the way, if you get like a boat donated or you get art donated that you're going to sell. Not if you're a museum where you get art and you're going to put it up. It's a different world. And so here's how we think about the future of giving, because we've had a lot of smart people thinking about it for a few months, and I wanted to give you some insight there. For things like this, for our friends at Austin Pets Alive or similar, we know that it's possible IRS regulation changes, but we're trying to solve all the problems to avoid these compliance risks, right? So the gifts are auto-liquidated immediately, but more importantly, gifts are accepted by a partner nonprofit. We call it Co-Catalyst Impact. It basically functions like a real-time DAF. So as soon as a donor gives it, that nonprofit accepts it, liquidates it to US dollars, and sends it on to the relevant charity. This is really important because then what they can do is handle all the 8282, 8283, and really sort of systematize that approach because you're handling it for hundreds of nonprofits. And so this is really exciting because you basically have all the upside of the cryptocurrency acceptance, but actually none of the downside of the risk, right? Because a lot of folks are doing it wrong, and you just don't actually want to expose yourself to that level of risk. Even if you know what you're doing, there's a lot of volatility in the nonprofit world. You might change jobs, the person after you might not know, and suddenly you've got a problem. So this has been really, really well received because we're taking on all the compliance burden. There's also, by the way, in case you're interested in one of these custom sites, there's no subscription cost. There's a very small facilitation fee on donation, but sign up takes about 10 minutes. There's a ton of interest, and so you can sign up for the wait list if you like. We're also doing a group demo where we'll go much more deeply into this. So I didn't want to use this time for that, but did want to make you aware of it because a lot of folks are looking for basically very low risk, very easy ways to start taking crypto donations to see that massive upside generally. All right, a couple more resources for you all. First, this book. It is a really important thing to focus on ourselves and our own mental health in 2022. And so we're happy to be giving this away. There is a link in the chat, I think, that my colleague Simone is putting in, which is a survey. So make sure you fill that out if you'd like a copy here. Gretchen Rubin is just great and really thoughtful and lovely. Let me make sure that the survey is there. Great, thank you, Simone. So that's in the chat right now. So take a moment to do that. We're sending out this whole cryptocurrency toolkit. Includes a bunch of best practices for social media posts, templates for fundraising, etc. This will be really valuable and hopefully takes a lot of work off your plate. So we'll send this out free to anyone that wants it. just make a quick note in the survey as well. We just mentioned this, but I will be leading a short demonstration of crypto custom giving sites on Thursday at noon Eastern, so 9 a.m. Pacific. Please come join that if you're interested. It's always helpful to get smart about new things in the space. Super easy, maybe less than 30 minutes, but we can hang out a little bit more. Same survey, there's an RSVP. And then after that, we'll be walking through a bunch of planned and major giving tools and some case studies on how other nonprofits are using it, in case that's interesting to you. So I know a lot of folks are thinking, how do we get smarter, especially as we enter calendar year 3 of the pandemic, and more of this stuff is happening online. And so some great folks will be leading that as well. Great. So you can also, by the way, request a one-on-one demo of any of these tools if you like. We are going to take a 6-second break. I'm going to read all the questions. We have many more questions than usual this week because so many folks are encountering crypto for the first time. So if you don't mind taking 30 seconds to fill out the survey while I take 30 seconds to read all these questions, we'll be back very soon. Great. A couple of really good questions. Thank you again for those of you that are taking the survey. It's just super helpful to us. Great questions. So I'm trying to look for some of the common themes. Melissa says, I don't understand if Bitcoins are of perceived value or actual value like gold. Please explain. Melissa, the best way to think about this is that gold is also perceived value, right? There are plenty of metals that have sort of stronger conductive properties, et cetera, than gold. And yet we collectively as a society and a civilization have agreed that gold has value. And so you can buy and sell it at cost or at a price. And so Bitcoin is very similar, right? We have just decided collectively, like at different points, we've used seashells or salt or baseball cards or stamps to have value when really none of them are sort of worth much intrinsically. And it's just a collective story we tell. And so crypto is basically the same thing, where we have decided as a society that it has value, and if people will pay a price for it, then it does. And so that may be one way to think about it. Kaja asks, are crypto gains subject to capital gains? Yes, very similar to stocks. There are short-term gains, which are less than a year, and long-term gains that are more than a year. And so capital gains taxes range from 0 for folks that are very, very low income to about 23% on the higher end. And the other thing that's really important to know is that many states charge income tax on capital gains. And so while you might think your capital gains are 23%, if you're a wealthy person in California, it's more like 36%, or New York City. And other states with income taxes tend to have that as well. In a place like Washington State, where it doesn't have any state income tax, it actually is now, I believe it has a new state capital gains tax as well. So there's a lot of reasons to be donating crypto. What if a donor does not want to have Bitcoin or crypto converted to dollars today versus sometime in the future? So it is extremely rare that donors will say, I want to give you this, but you can't sell it. I mean, in many ways, once they give it to you, you are in full control. And so mostly I wouldn't stress about this and say our process and our internal policy is to sell it immediately. That will be stronger for you. And I think just go there. You may be at an incredibly large institution who wants to develop a very specific policy for one particular donor with a very large gift. But for the most part, Strong recommendation to sell immediately. Another way to think about this is if you wouldn't invest the nonprofit's assets in this, regardless of how much money you had, then you shouldn't be holding it, right? So sometimes people say, oh, should we hold the stock we just got? Should we hold the crypto we just got? Well, the answer is no. It's sort of functionally the same as buying that stock, because you could either have money or that stock. And so, these things are incredibly volatile. Some of you with very large endowments might have a small portion of that in crypto, but that should be an investment decision as opposed to a default decision. Crystal says, we have a donor who wants to give us a non-listed crypto, but our platform doesn't accept this type. Any idea of what avenues to explore in order to accept this gift? Could this donor convert the cryptocurrency to another form, etc.? And it's a couple $1,000s. So Crystal, we tend to work sometimes with nonprofits who are getting donations of a specific coin that is a little bit more niche. And we often just tend to find workarounds for it. And so I think, as we look forward to the year ahead, we'll be working on a lot of different things to expand the number of coins, because even though some of these coins that are more niche tend to be less valuable in aggregate, they also tend to be really concentrated. So you might have someone who says, okay, well, I've got this coin, the whole coin, all the coins in the world of this type are not worth that much, but boy, I have 10% of those coins. And so this is worth a ton. And so being able to accept those can be really valuable. And we're seeing some of these gifts that are, just considerably large, which is pretty exciting. Okay, other one or two more questions. How can nonprofits store and utilize crypto safely? Again, Margot, we suggest automatically selling it and holding cash. There's a question of, can we get sample gift acceptance policies? We can draft that up and share it at a later point. The other thing is that if you are using a process like what we described, where it's actually getting passed through an intermediary nonprofit, you don't actually have to change your gift acceptance policies. So many of you who think, oh, I don't take crypto, you actually do take crypto, because donations are going to something like Fidelity Charitable or Vanguard, Vanguard Donor Advised Fund, getting liquidated and then getting sent on to you in some cases. And so it's a similar dynamic where you can actually start accepting crypto without changing your gift acceptance policies, because all you're actually taking is US dollars. So that is a really great question. I won't say the name, but someone says, this is probably a really stupid question, but so people use normal money to buy crypto, correct? That's correct. And then a donor gives the nonprofit crypto. The nonprofit sells the crypto for normal cash. That is correct. So you get crypto, you sell it for US dollars, end of story. You put that money to work on your mission. Ron says, how do we get our charity on the crypto for charity site? We are a local United Way. Ron, you can email us, but also a better avenue for you is you to actually get a custom site that you can put on your own website. That will generate a lot more crypto gifts. Samantha asks, what are the tax implications for the 990 with crypto, especially if a third party is processing? So if a third party is processing, it ends up being a soft credit, just the same way you get gifts from a donor advised fund. So you just list it as donations from, in this case, Co-Catalyst Impact, $350,000, and you listed that, and it's fine. So most of you have these processes in place because you get donor advised fund gifts, and that's going to be very, very similar. Okay. Jacqueline asked, what does it cost to have free will set up crypto on the website? We actually have no annual cost for that, so we're super excited about it. We've really put a lot of thought into this, and we think, how do we make sure that everybody has access to accepting crypto gifts without a lot of upfront work, without any upfront cost? And we just don't want you to be in a position where someone comes with a $200,000 gift and you have to turn them away, which I think is happening repeatedly. We talked to somebody earlier today who was in the situation where they might have foregone a multi-$100,000 gift because they just weren't ready to accept it, and that's a bad place to be. Okay, great. let's pause there. So we have another 80 questions, which means that we'll have to do a follow-up session at some point. But there's a lot of great stuff in the crypto guide. And so just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody for joining. Last pitch to fill out the survey in the chat if you haven't already. Next webinar is on January 25th. And on January 25th, we're going to talk a lot about, as we enter the third calendar year, which is hard to believe, of the pandemic, how that's continuing to shift fundraising, how it's continuing to shape philanthropy. We've got a really special guest from one of the top food banks in the Pittsburgh area, who's going to talk about all the way that her organization is adjusting and some of the ups and downs that are happening there, what she's seen work, what mistakes they've made. And so we'll dive in a lot there, and that should be really, really fun. And then lastly, if you just need anything at all, feel free to shoot me a note at patrick@freewill.com. Would love to hear from you. Just super excited about all the ideas and all the suggestions and other things that have come. Actually, the whole idea for our crypto work comes from folks here who wrote things in during the webinar and said, oh, we're really confused about crypto, but we'd love to take it. How do we do this? What can you do to help? So thank you so much for that. And then just a shout out to my colleague Simone, who's been not only manning the chat, but done a ton of the work behind the webinar as well. So thank you, Simone, and thank you all. I mean, I know that there is a ton of things on your plate right now, certainly at your job, right? Many of you are dealing with a couple of staff shortages on top of, maybe school is closed and there's an 8-year-old running around the house right now. And so making time for this and making time to push yourself and learn more is really a credit to you. So thank you, and hope to see you in a couple of weeks on January 25th. This was just a lot of fun, and thanks for all the engagement.